right, so we are going to move to Jalyn, who will introduce our next speaker.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for your presentations today. I'm going to be moderating the next session. So I'll be introducing Siddharth Reddy. Are you ready for your presentation?
Screen share.
Yeah, is he here?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay, so I will go ahead and introduce you. I'll pull up. Yes. Okay, so Siddharth Reddy. He's a junior at UNC Chapel Hill who is double majoring in peace, war, and defense and Slavic and East European languages and cultures with a minor in religious studies. He researches political, military, and ecclesial conflicts on the contested borderlands of the former Soviet Union. He is learning Russian, Romanian, Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, and Tamil. So I will share my screen now and we will go to his presentation and yes. Okay. Now full screen this.
Jalyn, I think we're going to share it on our side. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. Today, I'm going to be talking about crisis in Ukrainian Orthodoxy, ecclesial controversies in the midst of war. I wanted to highlight Ukraine right now because, as we know, Russian aggression has made it really a forefront of the conversation in Europe today. But before this, and especially before the annexation of Crimea in 2014, not many people really knew anything about Ukraine, and especially less so about the situation in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. In late November 2022, Ukrainian security forces raided the Kiev-Pechersk Lavra, one of the holiest sites for Ukrainian Orthodox Christians. This comes amidst the continuing reports of violent attacks against Orthodox churches and priests. On January 2nd, 2023, Archpriest Anthony Kotyunik had his throat slashed by an assailant while he was in a church in Western Ukraine. Churches and monasteries continue to be shelled by Russian forces. What makes the situation far more complicated, however, is that the majority of Ukrainians and the majority of Russians self-identify as Eastern Orthodox Christians, 72% and 70% respectively. Due to the long history of rising nationalisms in Eastern Europe and the resistance of the Orthodox Church to give ecclesial credibility to these nationalisms, there are currently two prominent Orthodox churches in Ukraine. One is supported by the Ukrainian state and the other by the Russian state. One is supported by the most senior bishop in the church, and the other is supported by most of the rest of the Orthodox world. Today, I'm going to present an overview of how this situation came to be and why it's important for those studying the conflict in Ukraine to follow it. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of the ecclesial crisis in Ukraine, I thought it would be helpful to provide a general background of the Eastern Orthodox Church and its ecclesial structure. The Eastern Orthodox Church is the second largest communion of Christians in the world, making up of around 12% of all Christians. It is predominantly found in Eastern Europe and the Middle East, areas where the Eastern Roman Empire or Byzantium had great political and cultural influence. The traditional claim, as you see on the screen, is that the Roman Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodox Church split in 1054 AD. However, it's more complicated than that. Different localities broke off communion with each other at different points in history. Like Catholicism, the Orthodox Church has an episcopal polity, which means that it's led by bishops, as you can see on the screen. Unlike Catholicism, however, the Orthodox do not have a pope. The closest such concept is the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople, who is currently Bartholomew I. He is the man directly in the center. He has the status of first among equals, which means that he has a certain prestige and a certain influence over the rest of the churches, but he does not have any direct authority to command other bishops, especially outside his jurisdiction. The Orthodox Church consists of the union of many autocephalous or self-headed churches and autonomous or self-governed churches, all sharing the same doctrine. There are 14 non-contested autocephalous churches, including Constantinople, Moscow, Alexandria, Romania, Serbia, Antioch, etc. Ukraine does not feature on this list. So, to clarify, autocephalous means independent. The church, an autocephalous church does not have to answer to anything other than an ecumenical council, which is a group formed by the coming together of all of the churches. An autonomous church, on the other hand, is generally left alone in its internal affairs, but it derives its authority from an autocephalous church. Now, let's focus in on Ukraine. After the collapse of the Russian Empire in 1917, many national groups declared their independence. One of these new states was the Ukrainian People's Republic, which existed for a few short years before the Soviets recaptured and expanded the now Soviet Empire. There was a similar nationalist impetus within the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, which had existed under Russian control for centuries. These Ukrainian bishops split from the canonical Russian Orthodox Church and formed the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church, or the UAOC, in 1921. On the screen is the one on the left-hand side. However, it remained unrecognized by the rest of the Eastern Orthodox community and was quickly suppressed by the Soviets. During the collapse of the Soviet Union, it reorganized itself in 1990. It continued to be unrecognized and deemed as schismatic or separatist. In 1992, some bishops from the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the new UAOC came together to form the Ukrainian Orthodox Church Kiev Patriarchate, which is represented on the right hand of the screen. These two churches remained unrecognized, with the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which continued to be under the autocephaly of the church in Moscow, was the official canonical church. However, after the annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014 and the subsequent war, Ukrainian nationalism understandably spiked. This led to more people and parishes joining the new unrecognized churches. As such, the ecumenical patriarch, the top foremost bishop of the Eastern Orthodox Church, seeing that so many Ukrainians would no longer be officially considered Orthodox, decided to intervene. Under his guidance, the UAOC, led by Metropolitan Makarios on the left, and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church Kiev Patriarchate, led by Patriarch Filaret on the right, merged in 2018 to form the new Orthodox Church of Ukraine. Very important, the of Ukraine. And it's led by Metropolitan Epiphanius. The ecumenical patriarch gave this new church the Tomos of Autocephaly, which granted it autocephalous status in 2019. For the purposes of clarity, I will be referencing this church as the Greek-aligned Ukrainian church. However, this is not completely accurate. The Greek-aligned church was recognized by much of the Greek-speaking Orthodox world. However, it has not been recognized by any other autocephalous Orthodox church. As the Russian Orthodox Church saw this declaration of autocephaly as an infringement upon its canonical territory, it refused to recognize the new church and unilaterally severed communion with those Orthodox churches that recognize what it continues to view as schismatic. The Greek-aligned church is in opposition to the previously mentioned older autonomous Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is now called also Moscow Patriarchate. It was forced to take this legal name I believe in 2016 or 2018. Its current primate is Metropolitan Oniferi. For the purpose of clarity, I will be referring to this as the Russian-aligned church, even though, again, that's not completely accurate. For most of the history of Orthodoxy in Ukraine, the Russian-aligned Ukrainian church was considered to be the direct canonical descendants of the ancient metropolis of Kiev and All Rus, which existed under the jurisdiction of the ecumenical patriarch from 988 to 1596. A metropolis is a major diocese within a church, so it's not an autonomous church or autocephalous church. Due to the Polonization of Ukrainian lands under the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the metropolis was actually transferred to the Roman Catholic Church in 1596. Later on, portions of it broke off and was reintroduced into the Eastern Orthodox Church under the control, once again, of the ecumenical patriarch from 1620 to 1686. However, when the Cossack Hetmanate, which is a precursor to the modern Ukrainian state, this is where a lot of Ukrainians get their national identity. They get it from the Cossack Hetmanate and also from the ancient Kievan Rus. When this Cossack Hetmanate came under the control of the Tsardom of Muscovy, later to be known as Russia, in 1654, this started to shift the center of Eastern Slavic Orthodoxy from Kiev to Moscow. In 1686, Ecumenical Patriarch Dionysius IV gave de facto control over the metropolis of Kiev to the Moscow Patriarchate. The current debate is whether Dionysius IV permanently transferred the metropolis to Moscow or gave Moscow temporary stewardship over it. The former would support Moscow's current position, and the latter would support the Ecumenical Patriarch's position. So that was a lot. I know the situation is a mess. There are two large churches claiming to be the rightful Ukrainian Orthodox Church: the Autocephalous Orthodox Church of Ukraine, which is the Greek-aligned church, the autonomous Ukrainian Orthodox Church Moscow Patriarchate, which is the Russian-aligned church. The situation becomes even more complicated when we recognize that the self-proclaimed Patriarch Filaret of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church Kiev Patriarchate, which is the gentleman on the right, split from the new church just 6 months after the union due to a dispute over the conditions of the Tomos of Autocephaly. And really, guys, it really had to do with which bishop would be called which title. So these guys are not immune to the same impulses that we have. However, this time around, Filaret's church has significantly less support, so we will not be focusing on it. When Vladimir Putin launched this large-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, this had major ramifications for how the Ukrainian people would react to the ecclesial crisis. The invasion was supported by many leaders of the Russian Orthodox Church, including Patriarch Kirill of Moscow, which we can see is standing right next to Vladimir Putin. This new phase in the war led to a spike in both Ukrainian and Russian nationalism, putting the older Russian-aligned church in a tough spot. Now, they are not only deemed illegitimate by the Ukrainian state, but their own patriarch has left them to die. The Russian-aligned state is now significantly smaller than the Greek-aligned church. Sorry, the Russian-aligned church is smaller than the Greek-aligned church. Even before the invasion, many parish churches, which are the local communities, left the Russian-aligned church and joined the Greek-aligned church. The transfer of these parish churches has increased after February 24th. Unfortunately, but not unexpectedly, many of these transfers were not peaceful. There are videos of supporters of the Greek-aligned church attacking those parishioners and clergymen who want to stay within the jurisdiction of the Russian-aligned church. There are, of course, also videos which depict the opposite situation. In the fog of war, it's difficult to exactly assign blame to these situations or to know exactly what's going on. However, due to the state backing of the Greek-aligned church, the Russian-aligned church has faced the most attacks. In fact, this is one of the justifications Vladimir Putin used to launch the invasion, trying to frame it as a holy war, in which the supposed legitimate church is being attacked by schismatics backed by the demonic West. However, this narrative does not completely hold up. In May 2022, the Russian-aligned church repudiated the Russian patriarch and declared its own autocephaly, which was probably not recognized by anybody. So now there are two churches in Ukraine that consider themselves autocephalous, which the rest of the Orthodox world is not unified in what the true situation is. So you may be wondering why I thought it was so important to share all these technical differences with you. Why should these nationalist disputes within the Orthodox Church matter, especially to Western Europeans or to Americans or really to anybody else? Well, the main reason is because many people in the secular West do not understand how important these institutions are to the social, cultural, and political environments of Eastern Europe. Even if people do not believe in the religious message that these churches are spreading, the narratives are still powerful because of their cultural importance. One of the founding myths of modern Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia is the baptism of the ancient Kievan Rus by Saint Volodymyr the Great. All of them try to claim a direct linkage to this ancient principality. So it's very important. These churches serve as custodians of legitimacy. When they change a little, they change much. However, of course, I do not want to make it seem like the situation in Ukraine is unique or unprecedented. There have been many schisms due to nationalism in the Orthodox Church. In fact, the first major instance of such was with Bulgaria. And in that case, it was the ecumenical patriarch that was trying to suppress them. So really, the idea that there's one institution that's always the good guy and one institution that's always the bad guy is not the case. However, as a whole, the hierarchy in institutions of the church have provided essential religious and cultural stability for over 2,000 years. These religious structures play a significant role in the lives of people, and their influence should not be diminished. Another reason is to combat misinformation. If you do not understand how the Ecclesial, oh, my friends are joining. Okay.
So called multitasking.
These religious, another reason I'm doing this is to combat misinformation. If you do not understand how the ecclesial structures of the Orthodox Church operate, you will be easily fooled by the propaganda of nationalists on both sides. You know, on a tangent, I was doing research for this a few months ago, and I reread the Wikipedia pages just yesterday, and they've changed quite a bit. So as this conflict has been going on, there have been attempts to rewrite history, make it seem like one side has a more clear message than the other side. Do yourself a favor and think critically and beware of unintentional biases and intentional misinformation. So, what next? It's clear that Putin's attempt to bring the entirety of Ukrainian Orthodoxy under the firm heel of Russian nationalism has failed. His invasion caused many supporters of the older Russian-aligned church to leave and the bishops to declare autocephaly. This is an ongoing situation. I had to update this PowerPoint just a few days ago because representatives of both churches came together as a first step to reunification. Both churches have condemned the war and are working together to perform burial services for fallen Ukrainian soldiers. This is important as a potential reunion would be a win for the ecumenical patriarch, who may now continue to grant autocephaly to other churches with disputed statuses. The Russian patriarchate's failure in Ukraine may affect its standing in other disputed canonical areas, such as Moldova. As a side note, I woke up this morning and I get this daily email digest from Balkan Insight. And the first little news was that the Moldovan state is considering giving back a key building to the Romanian-backed church in Moldova rather than the Russian-backed church in Moldova. So this stuff has very much influenced what's happening today. This ecclesial crisis plays an important, though not often spoken about, role in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict and Eastern Europe as a whole. It is a microcosm of the political and national conflict in the region. The leaders of the church are not immune to the political, nationalist, and cultural influences of their societies. Not all of them are saints. Many of them have their own agendas. By keeping up with this issue, you'll gain a better understanding of Eastern European religion and politics. Hopefully, the news that the churches are closer to reunification now than a year ago means that the Russians are closer to losing the war. But that is something we'll have to see. Thank you. Any questions?
I've just a quick one. Do you know about what percentage is distributed in Ukraine between the Greek kind of backed church and the Russian backed church?
Yes, so before, like if you see historically, obviously Russian aligned church was the biggest. Now it's 6%. And it's dropped substantially over the past 2 years. So they're really fighting to survive right now. I was just reading during our break that their main church, the main center where they are usually gathered, it's called the Kiev Lavra, or the Kievan cave churches. They were kicked out of their main church a few months ago, and today the Ukrainian state said you have to leave completely within, I think, a month. So the Ukrainian state really sees them as a puppet of the Russians, which I'm not supportive of that narrative. Obviously, there have been instances where some priests and some monks have aided the Russian war effort, but they've used these small instances to try to support a church that would, align with Ukrainian nationalist interests. Anybody on Zoom?
Yeah, I do.
Sure. Well,
Good to see you as always. I really enjoyed your presentation. I thought it was very in-depth. I have a question about a similar conflict almost. And it's okay if you don't know, but I was wondering if you knew anything about whether people broke off from the Serbian Orthodox Church during any of the wars in the 90s. Was there a similar issue?
yes, there was. So this is something, there was a conflict with the Macedonian Orthodox Church. So after the breakup of Yugoslavia, the Macedonians, started with their own national awakening. So they started to see themselves as separate from not only the Serbians, but also the Bulgarians. So many of the bishops split and created their own church. And this was an ongoing, really, conflict between especially the Serbs and the Macedonians for a long time. But a year ago, the bishops came together, made up, and reunified. So the Macedonian Orthodox Church is now considered canonical and has been declared autocephalous by most of the non-Greek churches. The Greeks are still a little annoyed with the Macedonians, not because of, in my opinion, not because of any legitimate spiritual or theological reasons, but because Greeks don't like Macedonians because of, you know, Alexander and Greek with Alexander and everything like that. So.
Thank you.
I just had a question of how you got into this topic, and like this is so interesting, and like I guess we don't really hear a lot about religion, or at least I haven't. So did you have a background in studying sort of religious things, or is this completely new for you just to dive into this new topic? Like how did you come across this?
So I'm a convert to Eastern Orthodoxy.
Okay.
So that's why I'm interested in the niches of these topics. Yeah, so that's pretty much the reason. I do think, especially, you know, I didn't know too much about Eastern Orthodoxy as an American. And when studying, you know, the history of Eastern Europe in general, the church has played a large role in it. So if the West really wants to understand how to approach the East, they need to understand this important institution.
That was my question too, but I also wanted to say that this is so great how you present the material because you're so knowledgeable. It's very complex, but you make it accessible. And I was like, oh, I'll talk about Ukraine, like I'm going to be really depressed. But actually, you end on this, you know, image of the two churches coming together and both condemning the war, and that's somewhat optimistic. So thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Thank you all.